Hi, I'm John Iredale, Pro Vice-Chancellor for Health and Life Sciences here at the University of Bristol. We started these podcasts of digital fireside chats in April, although it feels like it was decades ago at this point. However, today is a momentous day. It's the 7th of December, and we're looking forward to the vaccine being rolled out across the UK group by group from tomorrow, the 8th of December. And my first discussion was with Adam Finn, who's a recognised international expert in virology and vaccination. And we discussed the potential for testing at that stage and touched on vaccination. I thought it would be a great idea to revisit the discussion with Adam and to learn a little bit about how the science of vaccines and the development of vaccines for COVID has proceeded in the last 6 to 9 months. Adam, you're very welcome. I wondered if you could kick off by telling us about the developments of the vaccines and the new technologies which have been brought to bear to help us deal with COVID.
Thanks, John. Yes, nice to talk to you again about this. I have to say that if you'd told me in April, when we last did one of these, that we would find ourselves in the position that we're in today on the 7th of December, I would have laughed and said it was completely impossible. I don't think any of us really thought that we could be finding ourselves with, in fact, 3 different vaccines all showing convincing evidence of efficacy already less than a year before the genetic code of this virus was made public. So things have moved extraordinarily fast. And I think we should be very optimistic about that because it means that we now have a way forward, albeit a complicated and tricky way forward, but we have a way forward out of this problem. We now know that it is possible to prevent COVID disease, both severe and mild, using vaccines. And that's something we just didn't know before.
I mean, like you, I'm an optimist, and I feel particularly positive about these vaccines. And of course, there are more on the way, correct?
Yes, absolutely. These vaccines have come through faster than the others because effectively they are digital vaccines. They're vaccines that could be synthesized from the nucleic acid code of the virus. Didn't require any culture of virus or manufacturing of proteins to be done, so that they could be produced and put into trials extremely quickly at the beginning of the year. So there's no coincidence that these new novel vaccines are the first to come through. But more conventional vaccines are certainly on their way, protein-based vaccines and whole virus vaccines too, and even other platforms further down the line. So yes, there will be other vaccines. Although, of course, the business of bringing them through trials gets increasingly complicated as vaccines start being used in a routine kind of way.
And I guess we've been in the extraordinary situation where, because the first vaccines were described as having in excess of 90% efficacy, suddenly the Oxford vaccine looks a little disappointing at somewhere upwards of 60%. And yet, at the outset in April, when you and I were first discussing these concepts, we'd have been pleased to have something that demonstrated a 50% efficacy.
Oh, absolutely. And I think we need to be careful that these figures are headline figures. There's a certain amount of uncertainty around them. I think what we know about these vaccines so far is that they all work. One of the most important questions we need to understand is whether, beyond protecting individual people from getting sick, which is what we know, whether they also stop people getting the infection and therefore stop people spreading the infection around. And it could be that different vaccines vary in their ability to do one or the other thing. Ultimately, to stamp this virus out, we need a vaccine that will stop transmission, as well as one that will just stop people falling sick.
And of course, the other aspect that has been discussed and has entirely appropriately reached some prominence in the public media is this issue of the logistics of delivering a vaccine and the difference between having a vaccine that needs to be stored at -70 and one that can be kept in a regular domestic refrigerator. Presumably, these attributes will also come to bear on the way in which vaccines are deployed, not only in the UK, but elsewhere in the world.
Yeah, absolutely, everywhere, here and elsewhere. Delivering a vaccine that needs to be kept at very low temperature creates enormous logistic challenges, which we've not really had to deal with any vaccine programs in the past. And we're right in the teeth at the moment of working out how exactly best to do that. With limited supplies of vaccines, it's vitally important that the vaccine doesn't go to waste. It's also important that the vaccine that's put into people's arms is fully effective and hasn't been mishandled in any way that might reduce its potency. And so there are real practical challenges. More importantly, as you say, globally, there will be places where putting that kind of program with freezers and so on into place is just not feasible. So that plays into the discussion about which vaccine, where, how, and to who they should be given.
As you and I have discussed, given the actually momentous nature of the speed and the importance of this vaccine coming to the fore across the world, I mean, literally to deal with a worldwide pandemic. We're hoping that over the forthcoming months, as we watch the vaccine be rolled out, that you and I and others can have future podcasts. But just to wrap up today, I know that there have been discussion in the media about the speed with which the MHRA, the body in the UK, is responsible for registering and giving appropriate approval and accreditation to the vaccine has taken place, and the speed with which the clinical trials have taken place. And that bothers some people. I wondered if we might just spend the last minute or so talking about that.
Yes, of course. This is a topic that's of great interest to many people. I think the way this has come about reflects the speed with which things can be done when people put their minds to it. And a lot of the steps that would normally have taken a long time have been done expeditiously, but without cutting corners. The way the MHRA was able to get to its decision was that it started to receive information way back months ago as it was coming off through the trial centres. Whereas normally the whole portfolio would have been put together at the end of the study and given to them, and they would have then started the process of reviewing the data. So essentially during the recent days that they were looking at this, they were putting the final touches to a process that had begun some months ago. The size of the database, the safety database that we have for this vaccine is pretty much exactly the same as we would have for any other vaccine at the point that it goes into use. That, of course, is a lot less information than you have once the vaccine's been used and given to many hundreds of thousands, maybe millions of people over a period of months. And those data will come through in due course fairly quickly. But we have got the information that we would normally have at this point in the process.
Thanks. I think that's important and reassuring, and it's been very interesting, and I say this as a clinician and a non-executive director at North Bristol Trust. It's been very interesting to see how rapidly we've been able to move on several fronts dealing with the COVID challenge by putting our minds to it and ensuring that processes that previously were done sequentially are done in parallel.
Yes, that's right, and there's been a real prioritization process. I mean, I think a lot of other important stuff has been a bit pushed to one side, to be fair, and we need to be cognizant of that because that's important work too. But nevertheless, things have been prioritized. People have really put their hands to the wheel and made this happen quickly. And there's been an enormous willingness also from members of the public to come forward and take part in these trials, without which they obviously couldn't have taken place. So we have all of those people to thank.
I think that's an excellent point to end, but we should recognise the hundreds of individuals across the UK who've put themselves forward for these trials, and also acknowledge that thanks to you and the drive of our researchers and the willingness of our fellow citizens and health professionals to contribute, that actually the largest number from any city in the UK is from Bristol, recruited through the two acute trusts. So thanks, Adam, not only for talking to us this afternoon, but to you and all those who have participated in trials for bringing us to this important point.
Thanks, John. Been a pleasure talking to you.
Thank you.